Right, this week's Sky Cricket podcast, we're coming to the end of a long domestic season. The championship will be decided this week, and maybe by the time this podcast is released, Notts will have wrapped things up. They're certainly in the box seat as we speak. England have just announced their Ashes squad, and the Women's World Cup is just around the corner, which we'll have Mel Jones on later on to discuss that. But we'll get through England and some domestic stuff first. Nas, good morning. How are you? You're up in the lakes on another holiday, more holidays than Thomas Cook. It's unbelievable.
I'm not sure it's another holiday. Before I go off to the Women's World Cup on Monday, if I get a visa, by the way, I've
You've
had
still
my
not got
visa. No, I've got my visa declined twice. That's the only reason I'm doing this pod. It's just a message to the Indian embassy. Please give me a visa. I'd like to go to Guwahati on Monday. So
On
if
what
I get that,
grounds did they refuse your visa?
I
Bad
don't
commentator.
bad
For not
commentator.
letting him in.
There's so many grounds for not letting me into India, but I've put Chennai, born in Chennai. I put in capital letters at the bottom. So hopefully this time round I'll get the visa. Yeah, I'm just having a few days in the lakes, doing a bit of walking. You know, I like the lakes. Been a good couple of months actually, or a week for Lancashire. I drove through Ormskirk. Did you see Ormskirk won the club championship at
Yeah.
Lords, and the women won the Metro Bank 50. So Lancashire finishing the season well. Where are you? What are you up to?
I'm at home, up to not very much, if truth be told.
Have you got your Aussie visa yet? You're off to the Ashes at some stage. So
I That came through yesterday, yeah, or day before yesterday. So
all the
that's
things you've done for Australian cricket over the years.
exactly. They gratefully gave me a visa for a dozen years of pathetic Ashes performances, but that's not till November the 11th, so we got a bit of time there. But maybe that's where we should start with England's Ashes squad, which was the kind of, I suppose, the big news at the last few days. I listened in to Rob Key yesterday, did a Zoom for the written media, kind of explaining the squad. But I mean, there were never going to be many surprises in that squad, were there? 2 weeks ago, Key and McCullum said we can pretty much pick it now, and it was as expected, I suppose, with the exception of Will Jacks, that was the one maybe unexpected name.
Yeah, they've not blinked, have they? I mean, there's no point having their mindset and their mentality and their, the way they wanted to go about things for all this time. And then they get to the biggest of all series and Ashes away. And you move away from their principles. And their principles have been hard hitting, positive, attacking batters. And they've gone with that, which you could include Jacks in that, by the way. Fast bowling, no medium dobbers in Australia. So they've gone away from maybe Sam Cooke or even Ollie Robinson, who I saw got a fifer yesterday, and they've stuck to their guns with everyone has to bowl fast and bowl at a certain pace, and tall release point spinners. So they obviously were going to pick Bashir. Brendan McCullum said that he's the number one spinner before the side was selected or announced. And then who was going to be the second spinner? And we were debating Ryan Ahmed or Liam Dawson or maybe Jack Leach. And they've gone for Will Jacks. Obviously, Key spoke yesterday about, again, they want a high release point, but also it's the conditions in Australia. It's if it spins, they're going to play Bashir. If they don't think it's going to spin in a particular test match, maybe the pink ball test or whatever, they want to have depth to their batting and maybe play Jacks and play a part-time spinner. So Ryan Ahmed, a bit short, a bit skiddy, not a frontline number one spinner. They feel at the moment they've gone away from that. He'll be there on the lines. How did you see the Jack selection?
Well, it was surprising. I thought just because of the season he'd had, they'd go with Ryan Ahmed, but I would not have picked Ryan Ahmed because I don't think he's as yet. I think there are better batters. He doesn't get in. If you're an all-round cricketer, one of your strongest suit has got to be either getting in the top six or one of your best five bowlers, and I'm not sure Ryan Ahmed is that yet. But equally, it's hard to make a case that Will Jacks is that situation either. So I suppose the question would be that if Bashir got injured, say your scenario where they play one spinner, you have to play, it's a good pitch, you have to play a spinner, and Bashir got injured or whatever, would Jacks be your main spinner, or would they then call somebody up from the Lions. We don't know who's going to be on that Lions squad yet, but which is shadowing the main squad. Would they then call somebody over? I see Jax just as a kind of almost utility player. They quite like him as a cricketer. He can obviously bat, and as you say, he's a tall off spinner, but certainly thin credentials in first class cricket over the last couple of years. I
He's
think he's
played
got
something like five
yeah
games in the last
5
2
games
years.
in 2 years, 100, I think. Precious few wickets. Obviously, a lot of white ball cricket and franchise cricket that has impacted upon that ability to play. Um,
And the Ollie Pope decision to give the vice captaincy to Harry Brook.
well,
Me and you spoke a couple of
I
weeks
thought that
ago
was the
that
most significant bit of news, actually, given that the squad was kind of predictable with the exception of Jax. I thought actually that was the bit of news that interested me the most. One, because it may not be the case that Stokes plays all 5 games. He's 34 years of age. 5 tests come quickly. The last 3 come very quickly. In recent times, although he looked fantastic, in fantastic physical condition against India, bowled as well as he had for maybe 6 or 7 years, he still got injured at the end of it and didn't quite see that through that 5 test match series. So he may not play all 5, in which case it's going to be Brook, not Pope. But I felt there's a bit more to it than that. Rob Key yesterday suggested there is no ulterior motive as far as the Pope decision is concerned, in the sense that, he's the man in possession at number 3, and that fact that he's no longer vice captain doesn't mean automatically he's going to be demoted for Jacob Bethell. But I just have an instinct, a feeling in the waters that they are going to play Jacob Bethell, and that's just a guess, really, just a kind of instinct you get. And I think that decision is rolled into that. And there's a bit of cricket to play before we get to Perth. Obviously for Bethel in the white ball stuff, not so much for Pope. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Jacob Bethell walk out at Perth at number 3. In which case, I'd go back to where we were in May and ask the question why he wasn't brought back, and to get experience into his legs throughout the summer.
yeah, I found it that we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. The vice captain thing for me was never an issue really. It's like if Ben Stokes is injured, you look around your dressing room and you go, "Hi, Harry, your captain," or Ollie, your captain, or whatever. You just tie yourself to a position. If you make Ollie Pope vice captain, then you feel you've got to play him. So it wasn't the key line yesterday from Key was, "We think Harry Brook is a better leader." That's quite a strong statement to make. And Ollie Pope is a lad I think thrives on confidence. So that may have dented his confidence a bit, but just if Stokes is injured now, Harry Brook captain. So I wasn't that fussed about the whole vice captaincy thing. Any other shocks or surprises in that squad? Really, I mean, nice to see Wood back, and they have gone pace, haven't they? They've tied their master. We are going to go at them
Well,
with pace.
it must be the fastest pace attack that England have taken to Australia for, well, a long, long time. Obviously, Potts is the last selection there, and his selection, I guess, is based on as much. He's had a pretty ordinary season for Durham. I think he's the right call, because he should be strong and fit and bowl a good line, which is important in Australia. But he's not had a particularly productive season, so his selection is as much around the others as him. Cook not impressing particularly in that one game against Zimbabwe, the injury to Chris Wokes, Ollie Robinson kind of out of favour, Ollie Stone's only just coming back from injury. So, but I think Potts is the right call there. I mean, Rob Key did say yesterday that Chris Wokes is no longer in their plans effectively. I mean, it's a sad way for that to end, given the injury that we saw at the Oval and that unbelievably dramatic denouement to that series. But given his age, given the fact that he's not fit enough for the Ashes, the end of the Ashes will start almost a new cycle, and therefore they'll obviously look to move on. But it sounds like we probably won't see Chris Wokes in Test cricket again, in which case he's had a pretty good career.
Yeah, you just hope that Rob had spoken to Chris Wokes. I'm
Yeah,
sure he had. I'm
yeah.
sure he he had done. To suddenly say he's not part of our plans that virtually means we're looking in another direction. So he has been a great servant, a very, very fine cricketer for England, and it looks like England are moving on from him.
So that's the Ashes squad. Dickie Bird passed away. There was a bit of news a couple of days ago. Minute's silence all around the country yesterday at the county games, and a minute's applause, I think, at Headingley, which is where he'll be mourned or celebrated, really, because at 92, that's a pretty long and distinguished life, but an amazing character. He must have given. I mean, he only really gave them out when they were plumb, but he must have sent you on your way once or twice, mustn't he?
Absolutely. I saw a clip of him giving you out in '96. I mean, you had organised a farewell for him. I saw the line of honour we were giving him and Darryl Hare, I think it was,
Hell,
walking
yeah.
out at Lords. I was stood there clapping. And then 5 balls into the game, he gave you out. Plum LBW. Thanks for the guard of honour, Af, basically. And
Unbelievable.
you were plum.
Plum.
Absolutely plum.
Plum to Javagal Srinath. You're right. Organised it. Dickie walked out. He was kind of few tears and wiped away the tears, waved to the crowd, and then
That's out.
fired me out 5th ball. But an amazing life. I mean, you look at the span of a life like that. Born in the 1933, so born between the wars, right at the start of the Great Depression, and then by the time he's getting to adulthood, the country is coming back into some kind of prosperity, and Barnsley, great lifelong friendships with Michael Parkinson and Geoffrey Boycott, kind of son of miners, and just a different time and a different life. But a life in cricket, he played a bit, but not that successfully, which I think was kind of part of his understanding of cricketers, really. He recognized that the game could be difficult, that cricketers, it's not always a straightforward game. So his manner as an umpire, I think that was the key to his longevity and excellence as an umpire, not just his decision making. He was a bit of a not outer, but was consistently so. But the fact that he just had a good rapport with players, you could slightly take the mickey out of him, but you knew that there was a line. You wouldn't question his decisions, and I felt that his manner with players. I think it's really important that umpires are not officious. They don't stand on their rights, and they try and have a good rapport and relationship with players, which Dickie certainly had.
I was pleased actually. The Test match against India, I was on the outfield and Dickie came over. I was really pleased because I hadn't seen him for a year before that, so I had a chat with him. He looked really well, actually. I said to him, "Dickie, you're looking well." And the thing that struck me about Dickie was his love of cricket. He had a genuine cricket was everything to Dickie Bird, absolutely everything. Yorkshire and cricket were the loves of his life, and there was a bit of an innocence about Dickie as well. Every time you spoke to him, you just knew what you would be talking about. You'd be talking about the game of cricket, and it didn't look like it had diminished all those years when I saw him on the outfield a few months ago. And he will be missed. You can see from the reaction, it's not just the cricketing world, the reaction. People outside cricket have reacted to his passing. Just lovely. Sometimes what you see and what you get are two different things. With Dickie, what you saw and what you actually got when you met him away from camera or away from the field were exactly the same. Just a lovely man that will be missed, and a very, very, very good umpire.
And a pre-DRS umpire. Now, I mean, I think technology's been a good thing for the game broadly. I think, mistakes are minimized. They still get mistakes, but they're minimized. And DRS has had other profound positive effects, such as player behavior and kind of getting rid of pad play and all those things. But it's kind of meant that umpires are a little bit more anonymous, I suppose, than they were in Dickie's day. And that was part of the fact that he was so widely known. I mean, the game was more a part of the national conversation when he was playing and umpiring in his early days in the 50s, 60s, 70s. But he was kind of a bit of a character, and umpires, I guess, stood out a little bit more in the pre-DRS days. Now that the dead hand of technology makes them just a little bit more anonymous than they were.
One thing we haven't touched on, another sad bit this last week or so, was that Worcestershire win, really, in the Metro Bank. It was a rain-affected long day, but it was an emotional day as well, with what the passing of Josh Baker last summer. and the Worcestershire players and the way they spoke and reacted. And Nick Gubbins, actually, I did the presentation with him, and I thought he showed his absolute class at
Mm.
the presentation. I mean, they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory there, Hampshire, and yet another Hampshire loss, in a final recently. And Nick Gubbins could have easily complained about conditions and, Duckworth, Lewis Stern, or whatever, and he didn't. He just went, if there is a side I didn't mind losing to, was Worcestershire. Some things are just bigger than the game of cricket, really. And I thought he showed his class, as did the Worcestershire players that evening. And you've been speaking to Josh's dad, haven't you, recently? You did a piece in the paper.
Obviously, it was a, as you say, an emotional and uplifting day for all those reasons. And the JB33 Foundation was very prominent on the Worcestershire players' jerseys. Their sponsor had kind of decided to give the foundation the Metro Bank, and it was good as their word in the final, even though it was televised. So it was a very prominent day for the Baker family and Josh's parents, and lovely people, and handling that horrible situation as well as they can, and as you say, a very emotional end, because they at the end, once the trophy had been lifted, they became part of the celebrations. And Henry Cullen, who hit the winning runs, was one of Josh's best mates in that setup. So good day for Worcestershire, who's seen around that issue. It says probably a lot of good things about that club. Paul, Josh's dad, was telling me how supportive the club have been over the last 16 months. So well done to Ashley Giles and Worcestershire, not just on the win in the Metro Bank, but on the broader picture there. So that was a good day, although a little bit kind of nostalgic for those of us who remember, the one-day finals as they were. The Lord's final back in the day, full house, that kind of thing. I think they've got to think about taking that final back to Lords and try and make it more of an event than it actually is. Obviously, it's one of the consequences of the 100, how the 50-over competition has been downgraded to a development hybrid first 11 second team competition. But I think more can be done to make that final still more of an event.
And the counties voting to keep the status
Yeah, I mean,
quo,
that's the other
not
bit of news.
Turkey's not voting for Christmas.
Well, I mean, it's no surprise. So in the end, after a year-long debate or a season-long debate, the change is 2 fewer blast games, which for a lot of meetings and hot air and, seems a minimal change. But it's a reflection really on the different perspectives, to put it that way, that, the different pressures that come on a fixture list and a schedule. So, the players, the PCA, they've been trying to argue for a bit less cricket and a fixture list that is a bit more spread out, and a schedule that is a bit more spread out. And in fact, they were pretty critical of the outcome yesterday. But the members, they wanted 14 championship games, and they rallied around from the start of the season when they recognized that this review was coming and about to land. They rallied and pretty vocal in most counties that they wanted 14 games. Then you've got the high performance angle. Not that after the failure of the Strauss review, not that England Cricket, Rob Key or anybody had much to do with this, but the high performance angle would want very different kind of a structure. Then you've got the commercial pressures. So you've got all these different pressures and different angles and wanting different outcomes. And in the end, it's kind of come to a stalemate. I think it was probably 9-all in the end. It needed to be 12-6 to get any change through. And in the end, 12 games didn't have enough support. So they tried to get a 13-game option through, which to my mind looked a bit convoluted and quite a hard sell and hard to explain. And the outcome eventually, after all that, is 14 games. So not much change, 2 fewer blast games next year. So there's not going to be much more space in the schedule than this year, which hasn't pleased the players, at least.
I mean, everyone, I said a couple of weeks ago, everyone wants their piece of the pie. No one's willing to give up their piece of the pie. Everyone wants the best bit of the summer. And then everyone says, oh, well, what are we going to do about the schedule? Which, if you want the best bit and everyone wants bits of it, something's going to have to give, or you're going to end up with the schedule that you've got. So we're going to have more of the same.
And the last live game that we did then, or before the Metro Bank, was that Surrey Notts game, which was a good game of cricket, actually. High class fast bowling on both sides, and I was there for the first 2 days. You were there for the last 2 days, and a kind of thrilling end. But it looks like on the back of that Surrey's dominance in the Championship is gonna come to an end, and Notts will get home. Keysy rested a lot of key players for that final round of Championship. If you'd have been a Notts player, Josh Tong, say, with the Ashes just around the corner, but a Championship on the line, what would you wanted to do? You'd want to play, wouldn't you?
You'd want to play, absolutely. And I mean, but the bigger picture for Rob Key is not if Notts win the county championship. He and Brendan McCullum, Ben Stokes, and all of them are going to be judged on the next 5 test matches. So he has to look after that, really. So I thought it was an excellent county championship. And if you look at the county cricket this year, everything has been really close finishes. You look at the finals day, was a brilliant finals day. Metro Bank, we've just spoken, brilliant final. County championships going down to the wire. That game went down to the wire with Josh Tunn taking the last wicket. So there'll be some very tired, on the back of what we've just spoken about, some very tired county cricketers out there. But it's been an excellent season of county cricket. So as you say, in the next 24 hours, Notts may well be first time in 15 years that Nottinghamshire win the county championship, and Moneybag Surrey, as you often call them, may not get it this time. Can I ask you a question before we move on? It may be our job to give solutions to the problem. So let's just say you've got a clean slab of paper, sheet of paper, but you have to keep everything because everyone wants a piece of the pie, right? So they're the two things trying to oppose each other. So everyone's a piece of the pie. They want to keep their county cricket. They want to keep championship. They want to keep the blast. They want to keep the Metro Bank. They want to keep the 100, test match cricket, white ball cricket, 50 over. If you were in charge, what would be how would your schedule look? How would it go? What's the key factors that you'd have?
I've almost parked it. I've been writing about and talking about this stuff for so long now. It's almost like, well, it's an insoluble thing because of everything, you want to get in. There'll be people out there that say, well, just can the 100. But, that's not going to happen. You're too far down the road now with 500 million raised or whatever. So that stays. Obviously, you need the championship because the test cricket drives everything in this country still. So you need a good first-class program behind that. I personally don't like the fact that the 50 over competition now is just hidden and a hybrid development competition, because the 50 over World Cup is still a key thing upon which England will be judged. And then you've got the Blast, which is the key driver of the county finances. And, you don't want that to be pushed back into May in the cold weather. You want to try and give counties a good chance to sell that competition as well and get good crowds in, because that drives finances. So how do you put all that together? I mean, I think it's slightly unfair of you to ask me to prove all these solutions in 2 minutes at the end of a podcast. But maybe what we could do, is one podcast this winter, come up with this and give our ideal solution. Because you're right. I mean, we kind of complain and whinge, and as everybody does, but we haven't really offered the perfect solution. And that really, so I'm kind of not really answering your question, but that was where they started at the start of this review. I think it was Rob Andrew who said something like, everybody knows that the schedule is unworkable and unreasonable and hopeless, but there are 18 counties who say that, and we've got 19 different solutions out there, or not one solution that everybody can agree on. And of course, that is how it panned out. Um, so
Well,
that's not
thanks
a
for
very
sitting
good
on the
answer.
fence there. Thank
That's
you.
not a very good answer to your question, but maybe between us we can come up with the perfect ideal
No
solution.
chance.
um, should we get Mel on and talk what she's up to? Because when are you off to the Women's World Cup next week? Visa assuming next week.
Visa, yeah, Monday morning if I get my visa. Hint, hint.
Mel Jones, welcome. How are you? What time is it in Melbourne or Sydney?
Well, Sydney, I've moved to the dark side, 6 p.m. and I've put a jumper on just to make you guys feel really comfortable. But really, I was in shorts and t-shirt all day today, and it's technically still winter here in Sydney. So no.
Okay, fantastic. So before we talk about the Women's World Cup, which is right round the corner, and obviously you'll be part of that, you've got a bit of news. The Afghan women who are in Australia that you played such a central and important role in getting them out of Afghanistan to Australia, they're on tour.
They are, and I cannot even begin to express to you the WhatsApp messages and the extent of jubilation, excitement, and, that sense I think we've all been there, haven't we, as, international cricketers when you get selected for something that goes beyond what you're used to playing, and that's exactly what they're experiencing at the moment, which has been fantastic. So they're in Bengaluru at the moment. They're at the Centre of Excellence there, which I haven't seen yet. I will see within the next little bit, and it is next level amazing. The BCCI have set up a ridiculously good training centre there, and these women are experiencing all that and a little bit more at the moment. So it's taken them from not really doing a lot in terms of the training and playing prior to fleeing Afghanistan to now getting immersed in a high performance program where this World Cup, all these teams in the World Cup have experienced throughout their careers. So it's next level amazing.
And just tell us a little bit about the tour. I mean, how long are they there? Is it just a training program? Are they playing competitive games? And presumably all part of the funding that has finally been put in place to allow them to kind of up their game, as it were, in terms of cricket.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So first things first, we wanted to make sure they didn't impact their consistent playing schedule. So the majority here in Australia, so we didn't impact their playing here. So we've got it just before this World Cup, which is brilliant. They've got match simulations. They've got everything that a high performance team, an international team would experience over a 2 week period. So they're going through fitness testing. So I don't think they're overly happy with that. No one is. Like yo-yos and 2Ks. Not overly happy with that, but but they're doing it and going, right, okay, so this is their baseline. So for next year, all going well, we bring the group to England in just before the T20 World Cup over there. So they've got a baseline to say this is where we're at in comparison to the rest of the world. They've got match simulations, and they'll be heading into their first match tomorrow, where they'll be wearing Afghan colours. They'll be wearing the logo that they designed 12 months ago, leading into the match in Australia. They'll have their names on their back, and so for them, primarily, as much as it's about the training and the playing, it's about identity for them, and that's what we've seen just absolutely flourishing over the last week or so.
What is the end goal for you, Mel, and the team, and the story? Really, it's what you've done is amazing. What they have done is more than amazing. And you're now getting much more support from the people that you spoke about. But what direction do you want it to go in? Some of it, me and Ath stood on the outfield in Pakistan when England men played Afghanistan men, and there was a lot of talk about should that game go ahead. And I said, well, one of the reasons is it keeps us talking about what's going on in Afghanistan with the girls and women and what they're going through. Is that as part of the reason you're doing all this? Is to keep the story out there?
Yeah, Nasser couldn't have said it any better. I mean, I can sit here and I can do that because I've got a platform to talk about it. But one, it's not my story to tell. We need to have a platform in which these amazing women, in their own right, individually, but also collectively as a team, can keep telling their story of where they want to go. So I can sit here and say, I would love to be able to see that over the next 12, 18 months that we set up a program and a platform for them to have autonomy over their playing future, and they want to be able to go to the ICC and go to ICC qualifying World Cups. That's, I'm relaying a message here to say we're a group that were heading on that journey, and then we didn't have that. So we want to pick that journey up again, almost like the Afghan men's team did all those years ago. I mean, it's one of the most amazing sporting stories, the Afghan men's side, who had nothing, challenges, and now all of a sudden, not only playing in World Cups, but knocking on the door of playing in World Cup finals. That's exactly the storyline we would love to see for this group of women now. And I say that as in this group of women who are in India at the moment. It's not just those women, though, because there is a whole cohort of Afghan women around the world, and we know that they're cricket-loving people, to say, I'd love to be part of that now. And so that for us, that would be our dream position to say in the next 12 to 18 months, where are you around the world? We haven't forgotten you. We're going to open up the doors as much as we possibly can and provide you an opportunity exactly like the men's had all those years ago, and potentially fairy tale story, we finish in a wonderful World Cup position in the next, 5, 10, 15 years time.
And when are you off to India then? Presumably you've got your visa. Have they? They've given you a visa because they won't give Nas one.
Well, and fair enough too. And that's just common sense, really. So, just on his side, not on my side, probably. I have my visa. I'm off tomorrow morning.
Great.
Will I see you then, Nas?
I'm hoping so. You're going to Guwahati. I guess you're one of the big gun commentators, so you'll be there at the first game, I'm sure.
Look, I will just run off the lines that you feed me on air.
So it's just around the corner. Obviously, it's coming up, the 13th edition of the women's 50 over World Cup, which, I mean, on a more general basis, what are we now? A dozen years since it was last held in India? Would that be right?
2013?
Yeah. And I mean, if you put that in context, the change from then to now, not just, I mean, in women's cricket terms as well, but in women's cricket in India terms, between then and now is transformational.
If I cast my mind back to 2013, I can remember sitting there with the likes of Alan Wilkins and Dali Jamanos, Ebony Raver Brent, Prakash Wakenka, and we're sitting at the CCI. For the majority of it,
It was
no one
moved,
knew it was
wasn't it?
on.
The final was moved, I think.
Yeah,
dozen
yeah.
years
It
ago.
was just no one knew it was on. Like there was just no, the enormity of the ICC now and BC and how they can just galvanize people. And I think there's certainly been a movement. The men winning the T20 World Cup recently in the Caribbean / USA, and the scenes on Marine Drive. And I asked Ravi Shastri during our broadcast this summer in England, saying, will that happen if the Indian women win this 50 over World Cup? And without dropping a beat, he went, yeah, the place will be packed. It will stand up like you haven't seen before. And put the WPL into that perspective, put in the form of the Indian women's cricket team into that perspective, put in just the growth of the game, and all those rivalries. So it'll be a game changer for the women's game. I just hope that we're ready for that game changing moment. I think we saw a little bit of it at 2017. We were all there for the Women's World Cup final at Lords. That was that little moment in time. MCG. It's just sort of, one step by one step, but I think this will be one of those moments where we were there for that kind of situation.
The exposure has changed and the highlights of it, but also the standard and the quality. I mean, the recent game, where was it, in Delhi, Australia, India? I mean,
I'm amazed you haven't picked up on the prize money as well, Nas, given that's normally at the forefront.
It's all about money. Playing sport is
almost
not all about
$14
money.
million is unbelievable, isn't it? I think up from 3.5 last time. It's an incredible.
Not talking about the money, the game, 800 runs nearly. 430 played 320. The skills, Smriti Mandana, Beth Mooney. It is just incredible. The depth to batting, the skills have gone through the roof as well. Not across the board, but some nations are taking it to a different level at the moment,
Mm.
including yours.
Says the batter. All about runs, isn't it, Nas? We haven't talked about the bowlers. Did they not bowl well? No, you're right. Look, there is year on year, you do see it. You see a depth in the game, and we've just talked about India, Australia now, who have played each other quite frequently of late. But you look at Sidra Amin, who is on a vein of runs for Pakistan at the moment, which is absolutely brilliant. Tasman Brits from South Africa, and we're talking 50 over format cricket here as well. So that batting expertise across the longer format, and I think if you ask most of the women in this World Cup, if they want to win a World Cup, this is one they want to win, because this is your pure test of skill set across, and particularly in India, when you're going to non-connected grounds, there's all these other challenges that are going to be placed in front of these teams. So the team that comes out on top for this World Cup will definitely be a team that's managed every kind of situation. But you look at Sri Lanka, they've got home games now, which they weren't originally afforded. That brings them back into the mix. Pakistan being there and based there, that brings them back into the mix. So it is a supremely hard World Cup to try and pick. And I haven't even put England into those equations yet, but I'm sure you'll pick up on that.
Well, maybe we can talk. I mean, in the 12 editions we've seen so far, Australia have won it 7 times and England 4. And it feels with England like it might be the final, the almost last hurrah for a certain generation of players. You've got a number there, 33, 34, and that a little bit like Rob Key was talking about Chris Wokes, that at the end of an Ashes you start to think of a new cycle. It feels like that this is going to be the start, maybe, of the end of one cycle, and then England will think again after this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's every World Cup, isn't it? I look at this World Cup and I looked at, and I don't want to be an ageist, but I look at purely the ages of a lot of these players across all the teams, and I'm like, there is a huge cohort sitting around that 34, 35 mark, who, kudos to them if they can put themselves through all those warm-ups again to come back in 4 years' time. But you're basically thinking, that's it. Some of them already put the hand up, Sophie Devine saying that's it. But there's a lot there. You go, we're not going to see that cohort again. But then you look at the amount of players coming to this World Cup who have played in the ICC Under-19 Women's World Cups over the last 2 editions. And it's this huge space of, we're not going to see some of the greats of the game ever again, but we're also going to see some of the future greats of the game. And it's a really nice space to be in, kind of thing to say. And I don't think you get that often. It's quite a unique situation at the moment. So it's one of those, yeah.
Going back to the money side of things, if you're 33, 34, and there is a lot of money in the women's game. I mean, you as a trailblazer all those years ago would have loved to have been playing for all the money, but I guess a part of you is like, good, this is what we wanted to see. But if you are of that age and you have the World Cup and you have the win money and you have the franchise leagues around the world, there is a serious incentive to stay fit and keep playing for as long as possible, surely.
Oh, 100%. Like it's game-changing dollars, isn't it? I remember when the Aussie girls won last World Cup in New Zealand, and there was a commentary about, I won't say who it was, but like, Jonesy, a mortgage, I can buy a house. Like it seriously shifts your entire life, not just your cricketing career, your entire life. And that's coming from an Aussie who is well set up and has got great contracts. Now imagine if a Sri Lankan or a Pakistani player, or a South African player comes through and wins this. That is severely game changing. So yeah, hang in there as long as you can, lady. It is amazing. But at the same time, what it also does, jokes aside, is that we all know this, is we get to understand our game at a certain age. And previously for the women's game, is most of those women were leaving the game because they had to go off from work. So you get to 32 and you're like, can't do this anymore. I've got to go off and earn a living because I don't have any, Australia we call it superannuation or pension or anything. I've got to go off and set myself up for my life. Whereas the players now, their life is they can set themselves up for life in cricket. So now all of a sudden, when you get to 32 and you get into the best stages of your life and playing career, you are now being afforded that. So that's why we're also seeing these magnificent runs and the extension of the game and the expansion of the game is because of the investment in the game.
Nas talked about that amazing recent series between India and Australia. Obviously, Australia a short price favourite for this. I mean, can you see any particular weaknesses in their squad or any reason why they shouldn't win this tournament? Because that's the general expectation on this team right now.
Yeah. I will go back to the T20 World Cup in the UAE. New Zealand lost 10 straight games going into that World Cup. No one even put them. Did they put them in the semis? They certainly didn't put them in the final. And they go through and they win it. So there is a precedent set almost to say don't just rely purely on form coming into a World Cup. So there are a few dark horses there. And once you get through to semi-finals and finals, then anything can happen. I get that it's 50 over cricket though, and the longer the game goes a little bit, the less happenstances of just, how did that happen comes into play. And typically teams can and bounce back within phases of game. I certainly get that. The Australian team for me has understanding of playing in India, traveling in India, depth of squad, and a hunger to know that it's not just about they're going to win another one. For them purely, it's we're going to win our first one as this collective squad. So there's so many nuances to the Australian team. So yes, 100% they're in the box seat. India, you cannot underestimate them at home. And then there is still the New Zealand of the T20 World Cup who could just pipe up and just, spoil it for everyone.
You mentioned depth of squad there. Grace Harris, unfortunately injured on the verge of the World Cup. I mean, big blow for her, but if any side, any country can cope with it, it's this Australian squad. I know she hasn't quite transferred her T20 to 50 over, but still as that sort of finisher that can take a game away from someone, and the character of Grace Harris, it's a little bit of a blow, isn't it?
Huge blow.
Yeah.
I can't underestimate enough, and that's nothing to say against Heather Graham coming into the squad, who has performed superbly well in India over the last couple of years as well. What Grace Harris affords a squad is number one, it's her favorite format. So everyone thinks of Grace Harris as this power player, just going to go in there and hit the ball kind of thing. She is articulate about the game of cricket. She thinks about it. She understands it. She knows it. She wants to develop her game, and she loves the 50 over format. She gives you bat and ball. She's solid in the field, and she just point of difference kind of thing. You lose, and Australia have lost her previously going into major tournaments to a calf injury as well. So they've been there, done that before. I'm supremely gutted for her and for the squad as well, because I think she was an integral part of a World Cup winning squad. And we always talk about who's going to win your World Cups, and everyone goes to the big name players. But I often think it's the ones that are on the bench that win your World Cups. And so for me, I think that's a huge, huge loss for Australia. They won't miss a beat. They'll have planned for everyone missing, to Lisa Healy, to Elise Perry, to whoever. They would have planned for it over and over again on multiple levels. But yeah, massive blow.
Mentioned the venues there. Are there? It's hard to say. I don't think I've been to Guwahati. You're destined to go there first, visa permitting. I mean, do we expect huge differences in the venues and the way that the cricket is played at those venues?
I was speaking to DK actually about it, and he said just be careful at the start of the tournament that everyone just presumes India and spin. Like England have gone very spin heavy in their squad.
Yeah.
They've got 4 frontline spinners, and Kate Cross didn't make it because they left her out for the extra spinner. Just be careful. I mean, maybe towards the end of the tournament, when some of these venues get used and used again, certain pitches have to be maybe used again. So he just said, be careful. India, immediately when people say India now, people say, spin, slow, low. But we've even seen in the recent games, it is very batter friendly. So don't just presume spin is going to win it. Do you agree, Mel? Or
100%. Nas, I couldn't have said it any better, which I'm surprised agreeing with you. But so I'm agreeing with DK.
Yeah,
That's
at
right. I'm
least
agreeing.
we're
So, and I think you're right too. And when you look at the tournament too, so there are a few grounds that have been known as SEMA-friendly grounds. So if you go into that mindset, you could be caught short, and also you then get to finals time. So Navi Mumbai gets brought into the equation. Dew comes into effect. There's so many different pieces that you might not have to actually deal with at the start of the tournament. So that's where depth of squad comes into play. So if you just pick for the history of a country and you don't actually look at the games in which you're playing in specific cities, and then for the round games and then potentially finals, you could come up a little bit short.
So you're off tomorrow. Nas, you're off next week, visa permitting. If we were going to pick a winner, I'd be very boring and I'd say Australia. Is anybody going to move away from that rather staid and boring prediction?
I mean, India have got a great chance looking at their side. They may need their fielding just to improve a little bit. You can't afford to be dropping catches. England, the challenge for England, is that they beat sides, mid-table sides, lower ranked sides, and they absolutely hammer them. You know, Iggy Jones, Tammy Beaumont, 100 each. Nat Siverbrunt across the board will get runs against everyone, but they then get up against sides that are ranked above them, which are India and Australia, and to a degree, even now South Africa and New Zealand or whatever. And that's when the challenge, just in the summer, I did a game at Chelmsford and they walloped the West Indies. And they walloped every game against the West Indies. It was Hayley Matthews against England. And then they played India and it was like, okay, we thought we'd actually close the gap, but we haven't. So the challenge for them, fitness, fielding, and when they play against the big guns, the sides above them, to put in a performance. So England have a lot of high quality players. Any side with Nat Siverbrunt.
What would count as a early days in the Charlotte Edwards regime and a kind of up and down summer, if you like? What counts as a reasonable return for England? Do they have to make the final to be considered success or not?
Well, for anyone who knows Charlotte Edwards, the only success is winning it. She's done it with franchise. She did it as a player, as a captain, around the world with franchises, whatever. Anyone knows Charlotte, she's not going to come back going, oh, well, we got to the final. That'll do. That we've shown progress. They're going to win it. But the two sides who are playing against each other recently, Australia and India, they are the sides they're going to have to beat if they are going to win it. And that challenge of mentally, when you have to up your game, if they can do it, dropping crucial catches. The game they played, it wasn't even a knockout game in the T20 World Cup in Dubai. They dropped so many catches. So they've worked hard at it, but we'll see in a final. I mean, you've touched on New Zealand there. South Africa are improving, which, that's the only concern for me is I really hope, like Pakistan, Bangladesh, sometimes you turn up to a game and the worst bit about sport is you shouldn't know the result before it happens. Can you see surprises in this tournament?
I think the surprise will come from I'm almost India, Australia in the semis. Then I go, this could be actually quite interesting there. So there's a surprise in itself because I think in previous years most people would have said, it's a South Africa, England, or New Zealand, but I have a feeling because of Sri Lanka playing at home, Pakistan being based there for that time. You mentioned Nas, South Africa, who I think this might be a little bit of a lull period for them in the 50 over before they can get up and crack on again. I think it'll come down to there'll be moments in World Cups, as we know, it's a long tournament. And I look at England and India and key positions, and this is where you go to depth of squad. And I look at the wicket keepers. Now, if Amy Jones or Richard Ghosh go down in any way, shape, or form, then that shifts an entire situation. You lose Elisa Healy, it's devastating for Australia. It's a captain, but Beth Mooney slots in, and everyone sort of jumps up a little bit. So I think if anything, the surprise will come from how teams manage their players and get them fit and firing at the back end of a tournament. If you do that well, a la England, then I think they've got a really good chance.
Mel Jones, Ashes prediction and World Cup prediction. You cannot
Oh,
say
Ashes as well.
Ashes, men's Ashes prediction and women's World Cup prediction. If you say
Oh,
Australia,
okay.
Australia, that will just you'll never be
You're
invited.
never going to be invited back again.
Never invited back again. Okay, Australia and Australia. That was you gave me the perfect out, fellas. That's I will predict that
Go on.
you guys will get really excited at some stage in the men's Ashes and even the women's World Cup, and that'll all fall away very quickly. How's that?
Okay. Safe travels if you're going tomorrow. Absolutely all the
Cheers,
best
guys.
with the Afghan women. That is such a
Greatly
fantastic
appreciate it.
story. And we hope that tour goes as well as it possibly can. Nas, good luck with your visa.
Thanks,
And if you
Michael.
do get it, safe travels.
Thank you.
We'll be podcasting throughout the tournament, no doubt, while I'll be here. And yeah, safe travels to you both.
Lovely. Can't wait for our first stint together, Nas.
Yeah, looking forward to it now. Not.
No, you're not.